In our contemporary society, we have developed a strong dependency on satellites and the services they provide, and that dependency will only grow stronger over time. We rely on satellites for weather, research, GPS, military operations, and telecommunications. Satellites are threatened by the growing number of space debris in the Earth's thermosphere, which puts the satellites at a greater risk for collision, which in turn could cause failure. The result of such a breakdown would have systematic financial impacts, in addition to having social, political, and even national security impacts. The space recyclers can prevent such issues by cleaning and recycling the trash orbiting around Earth. We can create a safer environment for our satellites, space stations, or other spacecrafts and ensure a safer space for tomorrow.
Our proposal as space recyclers is to face the problem of space debris in our solar system before it directly affects our planet. Already we have over 500,000 pieces of space debris accumulating not only in our Earth's orbit, but the orbit of other planets as well, with over 20,000 pieces being larger than the size of a softball. Some of these pieces can travel up to 17,500 miles per hour, such as a small paint flake, which, when traveling at a speed of 22,000 miles per hour, has a force of 550 pounds. Space debris has only increased since the first days of the space race and has only continued to accumulate over time. To this day, our planet continues to contribute to the amount of garbage floating around, with a Russian satellite just recently colliding with a U.S. commercial satellite in February 2009 to create more than 2,000 additional pieces of debris. Studies have shown that these unintentional collisions between orbiting objects and now inactive satellites will only lead to an uncontrolled growth of space debris in Earth's own orbit. With the space junk flying around in our orbit, our satellite's ability to send signals will directly be affected, which will in turn affect the way we use these satellites to live our daily lives. One example is the GPS, or Global Positioning System, which utilizes precision timing and navigation signals that are vital to our modern global economy and technology. A GPS satellite failure from a collision of space junk could potentially disrupt emergency response services, global banking systems, and even possibly interrupt electrical power grids. As a nation, we have tried to take on the space debris problem before. One method was to simply track the space junk and maneuver our spacecraft around it. Recently, NASA has implemented a aerogel technology as a catcher's mitt to collect material from the Wild 2 comet, but its operations ended when the spacecraft ran out of fuel and had its protective shield pelted by dust particles and small rocks. With other countries such as China only adding more to the debris and contributing to the problem, America now must take a stand in preserving the near-Earth space environment.
Greetings from space. I'm Newlin McMaster, and I'll be talking to you today about the benefits of space debris cleanup. There would be many benefits that would come from cleaning up space debris. Satellites would no longer be in danger of renegade particles that roam the lower and outer atmospheres. This would make telecommunication more reliable without disruption to cell phones, radio, cable, and internet satellite. Also, navigation services and GPS for ships, public vehicles, and planes would be more dependable. This would ultimately lower the cost of insurance premiums, which the companies providing the satellite services would have to pay in case of damage. The International Space Station costs $2 million to change its circular orbit every time space debris threatens it. The space station travels in the middle of the thermosphere and frequently raises its orbit to avoid collision. There are shields which protect it, and warning systems from the ground can inform astronauts approaching debris. However, some of the debris is unavoidable. Astronauts would also be less in danger from punctured suits during spacewalks. At some point in time, it will be impossible to find a trajectory to launch satellites and space shuttles into orbit. If we started to clean up the debris now, the job would become less difficult, opening up our skies for commercial space travel and international scientific research. Maybe not in the near future, but at some time, precious metals that we consume vigorously for new technology on Earth will not be as abundant. We may need to recycle what we have lost in space.
Substantial economic, political, and legal barriers to developing, deploying, and operating active debris removal systems. The practicality of this project is a complex issue. As a rough point of reference, it costs around $10,000 per kilogram to launch anything into orbit. Aerogel is one of the primary materials that our project would require. Because of its porosity, it would be released into the Earth's lower orbit and used to encapsulate the traveling space debris. However, it comes at a hefty price. The cost is about $1 per cubic centimeter for 1 liter, though this mission would require far more. Because the U.S. shares the responsibility for space pollution, the federal budget needs to allot more money for scientific funding. It needs to support cleanup space debris projects by agencies such as NASA and our own.
Due to the fact that the U.S. is not the only party responsible, other countries' involvement is required, which leads to political obstacles. Spacefaring countries and the United Nations have only adopted mitigation guidelines and have not cited the development of active debris removal systems as part of their space policies. Despite the inconsistencies of the international policies, there are some clear-cut parameters established. Provisions listed in the Outer Space Treaties of the 5 United Nations are also noteworthy. Article 8 of the 1967 Outer Space Treaty states that nations retain jurisdiction and control over their space objects, and the ownership of the objects launched into outer space. This regulation becomes significant in combination with the 1972 Liability Convention, which states that nations are internationally liable for damages caused by their space objects in both space and on Earth.
Another issue that cannot be overlooked is that of liability. International space law requires that the country under whose jurisdiction they fall retain the responsibility for their activities. Complicit with that is a liability for any damages caused in the course of the removal. Organizations that implement the removal of space debris may be faced with substantial, comprehensive insurance expenses to cover potential liability. Additionally, they would be faced with the risk of patent infringement and its resulting legal expenses.
Our mission is largely feasible from a technological standpoint. All systems required for low Earth orbit spaceflight and collection of debris have already been invented and tested. Privately funded companies such as Virgin have been developing cheaper ways to travel to and from space and could possibly hold an interest in clearing low Earth orbit debris for future development of private space travel and airspace traffic control. The most feasible funding for this project would most likely come from public money. Most users of low Earth orbit are public entities for social benefits. Governments have funded these mostly through public money and have been largely at fault for the space debris problem. With the total value of space activities from public spending being around $280 billion, it is only reasonable that governments should invest in this space project. While this project will be costly, it's quite necessary. LEO is becoming more and more complicated and shows no signs of slowing. As the number of satellites go up, so will the possibility of collisions. As the number of collisions go up, so does the amount of space debris. This is a cycle we hope to prevent. The buildup of debris is not a naturally reversible process. If we are to clean up space, it will certainly be complex and very expensive. If we continue, as we have, to use these very popular orbits in near-Earth space, the density of the debris and collision events will surely increase. To enable a safe future for space activities, a system for removal of space debris will be a necessity. The longer it's put off, the more expensive it will become. The most effective way to prevent future space collisions is the removal of larger debris such as non-functioning satellites and jettison orbital stages, as well as collecting small debris fields in the aerogel. The annual removal of just 5 of these large objects could significantly stabilize the future low Earth orbit environment. The removal of these few large objects would make the mission very straightforward and manageable by a small group of space nations, or possibly even the United Nations. The United States is largely at fault for creating much of the low Earth orbit space debris, and would probably be a prime candidate for leading these operations.
In this section, we will cover method and procedure. But before we get into the steps of space recycling, let's talk about the personnel and equipment we will have to utilize. In any project or objective, having the right personnel is key in having success. In order for the space recycling project to be successful, we will utilize personnel from headquarters on Earth and from the space station. Headquarters will house the navigation and telecommunication departments. These departments will be responsible for controlling the drones and communication between HQ and the space station. Also, engineers will be utilized to create the satellite shields and make any necessary repairs from Earth. The space station's key responsibility is to oversee the recycling efforts and keep inventory on the amount of debris that comes in. Now and then, aeronautical engineers on the space station will make repairs to the unmanned droids. The equipment utilized for this project is separated into two categories: satellite navigation and recycle procedure. As you can see, the equipment for satellite navigation is the satellite itself, aerogel backgrounds, gel shields, release mechanisms, meter scale, and magnetic strips. The aerogel background is 99.8% air and provides 39 times more insulating than the best fiberglass insulation. The gel shields were created to provide a protective shield that will not only decrease damage to the shield, but will also collect debris with magnets attached to the satellite. The release mechanism is the equipment that releases the gel shields from the satellite. The meter is a tool that notifies HQ that the satellite is at maximum capacity with debris. Now, the recycle procedure will utilize the space station, unmanned drones, magnetic nets, storage facility, and the recycle shuttles. The space station will house the debris and the drones. The unmanned drones will collect the debris and gel shields from the satellites. They will also replace a used gel shield with a new one. The storage facility is located in the space station and houses all the inventory debris. Lastly, the recycle shuttle takes the debris to Earth where it will be recycled. I have simplified the steps so we can get a better understanding of the procedure for getting the debris out of LEO. The satellite will launch into space. Once the satellite is in orbit, the gel shields will open, creating a protective shield from space debris. When the satellite is alerted by its meter that the debris capacity of the satellite is at its maximum, the satellite will then release the gel shields. The gel shields automatically close on themselves, trapping the collective debris. Once HQ is notified, they will alert the space station and send out an unmanned recycle drone. Once the drone locates the gel shield, it will collect the debris and install a new shield. The drone will then return to the space station. The drone drops the gel shields off, and then the gel shields are cleaned and reused on another satellite. The debris is collected, inventoried, returned to Earth to be recycled.